So I, Chair Eric Sandoval, call the Building Code Structures Board meeting of June 30th, 2021 to order at 9:31. Melissa, please call the roll.
Yes, Andrew Dykman, excused. Stephen Forster.
Here.
Brenda Hartzog.
Here.
Gary Heikkinen.
Here.
Randy Samuelson.
Here.
Kale Zuslag.
Here.
Vice Chair Eric Schmidt.
Here, thank you.
Chair Eric Sandoval.
Here. Thanks, Melissa. Sounds like we have a quorum.
Yes.
I'd like to ask in the board members if they'd like to change any of the agenda items. Assume that you have the agenda as well as the help sheet available to you. Hearing no objections to the agenda, I rule that the agenda and the order of business is approved. We have an upcoming meeting after this one in August 4th, 2021. And at this point, we move to agenda item related to public comment. As of yesterday, we didn't have any items on the public comment section. Can you validate that there's been nothing more that's come in, Melissa, since yesterday for public comment?
We have not had any, and I'll also ask Tyler if there have been any updates.
Thank you, Melissa and Mr. Chair. This is Tyler Glaze, Policy Analyst for the division. No, we have not received any public comment.
Thank you very much, Tyler and Melissa. Next item on the agenda is the Structural Program Chief, Tony Rocco, and the Policy Technical Services. Tony, would you like to give us an update on the program, please?
Sure thing. Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the board. For the record, Tony Rocco with the division. Not much in the way of a program update for the board today. As you all know, our technical team has been focused on the recent 21 OSSC and those associated online resources for that specialty code. But I look forward to the board discussion today, and as always, I'd be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Are there any questions for Tony, Program Chair, from the board at this time? No questions. All right, thanks very much, Tony. Appreciate that. Okay, we don't have anything on the communications, appeals, or unfinished business, so we'll go into new business. And we've got a couple items here, a couple people that would like to speak about this next item for the new business, and it has to do with the upcoming 2022 Oregon Structural Specialty Code. So I have inside the agenda the Melissa, did I miss the meeting minutes from last? I did.
Oh, that's yes, Mr. Chair. I didn't realize that, but
I'm sorry, board members. Before we go to the new business, I would like to go back to the minutes from the February 3rd. I took it out of order and I skipped over item D, and just to ask if there's been any recommendations for changes to the February 3rd meeting minutes from any of the board members. No changes. So with that, I rule that the draft minutes that are included in the agenda items for February 3rd have been finalized. Thanks for your patience, board. So back now to the new business. Melissa, sorry, we got a little bit out of order there. And I'd like to introduce Tyler Glaze. There's a memo that you put together, Tyler, and just going to go through that with us. Appreciate you being able to put that memo together and introduce this new item of business. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, members of the board, my name is Tyler Glaze, Policy Analyst for the Building Codes Division. So the time has come to adopt a new code, which we will be calling the 2022 Oregon Structural Specialty Code. And if you take a look at your memo, it's a general summary of the proposed process steps for developing this. As you probably know, the division, with the approval of the Building Code Structures Board, adopts the minimum construction, reconstruction, alteration, and repair of buildings and other structures. These standards for this are called the 2022 Oregon Structural Specialty Code. We are planning on adopting this on October 1st, 2022 is the effective date. With the approval of the board, we're wanting to get this process started. And if you look at the relevant dates, today's June 30th board meeting is just, these are proposed process steps, and we would like, any comment that the board would like to provide on these. The board will announce the 2021 International Building Code as the model code. Assuming that you approve of these, the board announces that a code committee will be formed to create a proposed 2022, OSSC, and directs the division to solicit members for that code committee. Persons selected to serve on this committee will be announced at the board's August meeting. And then from July 1st, 2021 to July 15th, 2021, solicitation period begins for the code review committee members. And from July 1st, 2021 to August 15th, 2021, public technical code amendment proposal period is open to receive submissions on proposed technical changes. And then at the August 4th, 2021 board meeting, our next board meeting, the board will announce the members of the code review committee and identify the chair of that committee. The scheduled meetings of the Code Review Committee will be determined based on the availability of the committee members, but the meetings will occur after the next board meeting, the August 4th, 2021 board meeting. And Mr. Chair, I believe Tony Rocco would like to add a little bit of color to this summary. And if I can answer any questions, I'm happy to, but this will require a motion.
Tyler, thank you very much for that overview and the detailed orchestration of this upcoming code. I think it's going to be very important for our state to have this updated code, and I appreciate Tony, if you could add some clarity or color to that. I appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely, Mr. Chairman. Again, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, for the record, Tony Rocco with the division. And to add on to what Tyler went over, we've had the 2019 OSSC has been in place since October 1 of 2019, mandatorily effective statewide since January 1 of 2020. And so we're looking at this next OSSC iteration, and just a couple of items to flag, kind of high level, big perspective for the board. And we have the existing building chapter. So remember kind of the history on that, chapter 34 under the 19 OSSC. Obviously, the board made the determination to go in line with the model, the international existing building code. So that's a large portion of this effort. We also have the integration of the new construction provisions of the International Fire Code. A lot of good work in the past on that. And then we also have, of course, the body of the base model code, the IBC or the OSSC. So those are the main things I wanted to flag for the board, and I'm here to answer any questions you may have. Thanks.
Hey, Tony, I'd just like to open this up to the board to have some opportunity for questions to Tyler and Tony before we open into the discussions about how to do the motion. So specifically, board members, if you have some clarity on what's being requested and the color that Tony's provided, please feel free to ask a question. Yes, Eric Schmidt, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Tyler and Tony. Just a, I guess, suggestion / question on just the information presented by Tyler. Yes, Tyler, I just want to double check. I guess my thought is, given that we're July 1st tomorrow, we have a holiday coming up. I'm just wondering if there's consideration to extend the period for, interested parties to solicit or being part of the code committee. It's kind of tight on that, and wondering if the BCD would consider maybe an additional week to take into account just the natural holiday time kind of thing. So that would be suggestion / question. And then I guess the other thing I wanted to ask, I guess Tony, is I'm assuming with all that we're going to go through in terms of code changes that all of the chapter 1 work will basically roll over, I assume, into this. Is it the thought that it would just kind of thread into this code development cycle in terms of all the work that was done on chapter 1?
Yeah, so Tyler, you address Eric Smith's comments, and then we'll go into Tony's response. Thank you for the time.
Certainly. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, members of the board, Tyler Glaze, policy analyst for the division. Mr. Schmidt, just to go off what you said, the proposed dates are just proposed. These are just some suggestions that the division came up with within the timeline of the proposed, date of the code being adopted. If the board would like an extended time period for any of these items, they're more than welcome to extend those times. If they approve these, these proposed steps, they can set those timelines right now. Because like I said, these will require a motion in order for the division to get rolling with these various items. So if you would like additional time for these, please discuss those amongst yourselves and identify those, and the division will follow whatever recommendations you set.
Thanks, Tyler. Eric Smith, any follow-up on that question, clarification to Tyler?
Chair, thank you. Thanks, Tyler. Appreciate the information. I guess just a follow-up question. How is BCD proposing to, I guess, cast the net? Is it more of just an email blast out to all the subscribers kind of thing of BCD about we're soliciting code committee members?
Thank you, Mr. Schmidt. Again, Tyler Glaze for the division. I apologize, I haven't been around for the last adoption of the structured code, but in my experience with the other codes, generally what BCD will do is put announcements on our website. We'll send announcements to relevant companies and relevant stakeholders, if you will, basically saying we're accepting committee recommendations for this new code that we're planning on adopting. So if you have recommendations or if you would like to be part of it, please reach out to us, and then we communicate those to the board, who then assembles a list and we'll choose those committee members.
Okay, thank you. And Chair, just one, again, I understand this will be up to the board and appreciate that. I guess my suggestion for board consideration is, again, maybe extending that period by a week just to take into account the holidays. So thank you for that.
Sure. Yes, Eric Schmidt, we will talk more about this, and I'm sure other board members have other comments as well. Just this part right here, just clarifying the proposal. So Tony, one of the questions that Eric Schmidt had was having to do with the Chapter 1 provisions, and wanting to see if that will roll over. Could you respond to that, please?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman and Mr. Vice Chair, members of the board. Again, Tony Rocco with the division. So yes, Mr. Vice Chair, that's my understanding is that we would be taking that interim amendment to the 19 OSSC, that Chapter 1 administrative provisions, and kind of rolling that forward. So that's right. That's currently where we're at. And then, as always, as we brought that Chapter 1 to this board for input, this board can always offer up input throughout the process on that Chapter 1 as well. And then to just add on to what Tyler said, we also send out just a notification to those folks that are signed up to receive division updates. So when we send out that solicitation, that'll go to anybody that's completed the sign up on our webpage. Hopefully that helps.
Great. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yes, Carrie, I can have some questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Gary Hickman. I was just thinking if we were to extend it a week, I would probably push it beyond our scheduled August 4th meeting. Would we then need to reschedule the August 4th meeting? I guess that's my first question. And I don't know if Tyler or Eric, if that's a question for you. If we push this out a week, then we are not making an announcement on maybe at our August 4th meeting. Do we push our August 4th meeting out a week too if we extend the period?
That's a really good question, Gary. Board Member Gary, I would like to address that to Tyler related to the interior ability to take on the proposed committee members, and if that's enough time to prepare for the August 4th agenda item. Would that give the division enough time to make that work? And if the answer is no, then we would see an impact on the August 4th date. I think my overview of that is that I know that scheduling the August 4th date is really important. So that's to me more of a milestone of not being able to be moved. So I'm just opening that idea up to Tyler and seeing if there's still enough time, and if you could comment on how much time is needed to do that work.
Thank you, Chair Sandoval, and all members of the board. Again, Tyler Glaze, policy analyst for the division. I don't anticipate, obviously, and this is just speaking from my perspective, I don't anticipate any issues meeting the August 4th deadline if the solicitation period was extended for about a week. That is not speaking for all of the apparatus of building codes, at least, but for my work with the board, if the board wanted to extend that timeline, I think that would be acceptable. But I'm certainly happy to look into that and speak with other BCD members real quick here while you guys are discussing the issue. And Alana Cox, the administrator, is here and saying, yes, that does seem to work. I believe that's correct. So I don't anticipate any issues or needing to reschedule that board meeting if the board did want to extend.
Board Member Gary, did you have any additional questions to follow up on that?
I think what I heard is that if we extended the timeline, the timeline right now is sometime before August 4th, right? I don't really see a specific date that worries me.
I just kind of clarify on the code development chart, it says July 15th. So July 1st to July 15th is the current proposed committee member solicitation, and board member Eric Schmidt was recommending that maybe we add another week to that, which make it somewhere around the 22nd, July 22nd. So,
All right,
so that would make the July 22nd to August 4th would be the time.
Obviously, I should have read that a little bit more closely, and I apologize. So, I would support extending the week to July 22nd. Obviously, we could probably even extend a little bit farther. So, I think that's not a bad suggestion. So, I would sure support that.
Thanks, Board Member. Is there any additional questions that you had for Tyler or Tony?
Chair, you're on mute.
Sorry, thank you very much. Steve Forster, would you like to have any questions to Tyler or Tony?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't have any questions, but I do have just a comment around the timelines. I wholeheartedly agree that we should add as much time as we can without having to move our August 4th meeting. This board is dependent on, this process is intended to be a public process. This board depends on volunteers from across the state to really provide that high level of technical expertise. And given the holidays and everything else, that is an incredibly short timeline to meaningfully solicit participation. So I just want to advocate for that. Let's please add as much time as we can, again, without needing to move that date. And thank you to the VCD staff for doing everything you can to accommodate that. It's much appreciated. And my second comment is around the public comment proposal period. I don't know, and maybe we can have some discussion on that, if that's able to be expanded at all. And if not, 45 days is a very short time for public comment on a model building code, right? In the national process, it's literally, it's a multi-year process. So we're consolidating that into 45 days. I don't know if that can be expanded. If it can't, then my only comment would be, let's, please do as much outreach and advertising as we can. I know that was certainly feedback I got last time that a lot of people didn't know, and it was very compressed. So thank you for soliciting comments, and I'll turn it back to Chair, or if you want to have BCD staff comment on any of that.
As Board Member Forster, I just would like to invite Tony or Tyler to comment on Board Member Forster's comments related to both the public comment period and also the solicitation for committee members, if there's any additional flexibility there.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll answer that. There is definitely additional time that we can add to either one of those deadlines. 1 to 2 weeks for either one, I think, would be perfectly acceptable, and still having us within the proposed timeline that we're looking at.
Appreciate that.
Sorry. Lana.
Go ahead.
Thanks, Chair Sandoval. Sorry to jump in here, and appreciate the feedback, Eric and Steve, on the timeline. I think on the committee membership, certainly an extra week is not going to hurt our timeline. I think we can look at the proposal period. I would just like to throw out there, we're under the pressure, as usual, of getting code books on time by October 1 of 22. And we're in a situation right now where we do not have code books for the residential code. And I know folks are frustrated by that. And so anything that kind of pushes out when the code committee can start meeting, when we can start doing that code development work, that's coming up against that October 1 deadline for having books. So that's the trade-off. I completely understand. We are definitely trying to be proactive, and I would also ask all of you on the board to consider, who might be interested in serving on the code committee, who that would be interested in submitting code proposals, and help us do that outreach, since we have such a good representative board here. Because it's the constant challenge with code adoption, right? It's never enough time, but we want it on time. And so that's the trade-off we're trying to kind of work through. That's why we're having this conversation now, and wanted to kind of lay out the complete timeline for you. A couple weeks, I don't think on code proposals is going to tank us, but that pushes out, staff has to go through those code proposals, then we have to bring them to the code committee. So that one pushes everything out. The committee member solicitation wouldn't slow us down on the rest of our timeline.
Thank you. Is there any other board members who would like to request to comment or questions to Tyler or Tony? All right, so at this point, I'd like to introduce the board members to a discussion related to these proposal dates, and also to the motions that are available to us. And as an introduction to that, I'd like to comment on a couple things for myself and what my understanding of small group dynamics is about. This is not a very long history of understanding small group dynamics, but just my own personal opinion, so I don't represent any kind of official methodology of doing small group dynamics. So my hope is that when we put this committee together, or request BCD to put this committee together, that the recommendation would be of a number that would be odd. In other words, like a 5, 7, 9, 11 number of committee members. And as we go smaller, like 3, 5, 7, those numbers tend to carry a pretty heavy burden on those that are on the committee, meaning making decisions that are of great importance, that they are difficult to do with an individual as opposed to a group of people. So my preference is to lean more towards the 7 number. Also, when the numbers are greater than that, like in the 13 or 15 number of committee members, because of also that dynamic of opinions and input, that also gets pretty heavy, and there's a lot of dialogue that happens that may flesh out important information, but it may not serve for timing or scheduling of things. So my preference to the board would be to target the the 7 number, the number of people that would be on the committee to be around that number, and try not to make it a number that would be an even number, so that if there's a problem with a particular decision, that an odd would actually give us a decision one way or the other, either to agree or not, or disagree with that proposal. The other thing I'd also like to mention is that the information that all of you have brought to this board has been really helpful, and how you see the world and what kind of things you do within your practice of care has been really helpful as well. So having this mixture of people is in the preferential way that you look at things has been very helpful. So I request of you individually, if you could reach out to your group that you're working with, you know, the people that you represent or the people that are of like minds to you, and request of them to be able to come to help out with this committee. That would be a great service. I personally would like to offer myself as a part of this committee, and I know that if you have other people that are on this board who'd like to be a part of the committee, I'd welcome that as well. So with that idea and those 2 key pieces of the number of people and the mixture of those that we're hoping for, I'm not saying that we would require that mixture be done, but I'm trying to solicit to you that you could reach out to those who are within your work group. So with that opening, I'd like to have a discussion with the board and individuals who would like to talk. Yes, Eric Schmidt, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for your comments. I appreciate it. Definitely, I mean, I understand the desire to have kind of that odd number. I know how that kind of has worked on the city side with different committees and things like that. That's helpful at times. 7 seems like a good number, but I don't know what historically we've had. I mean, even something that's like of this magnitude and as many stakeholders as what I hope would participate, I could even see at least a 9 number. And I guess that's one of my questions. And I just need maybe a refresher, please, from DCE about how this has happened historically. What has been the general makeup of the code committee? Is it primarily building officials? Is it diverse enough? And how do we make sure it is diverse enough in terms of including key stakeholders in this? So we have representatives from the contracting side and the specialties, and, you know, just like, how do we do that? The engineering, the architecture, the building codes. Is that kind of one of our goals, I assume, with this, is to have a pretty diverse group work on this together?
Tony, Rocco, could you address that, or would you like to defer that to Tyler?
I can address that, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. Again, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Tony Rocco with the division. So, Mr. Vice Chair, exactly. You know, in the past, in my experience doing this, quite a few iterations now. Typically, we've had groups between 7 and 9, depending on the complexity of the specialty code that the committee is looking at. Generally, the committee makeup reflects that of the board. So, as Chair Sandoval had kind of mentioned, you know, having board members reach out to their specific stakeholder groups and the folks that they represent has always been a great way to get, you know, folks engaged and submitting in interest to participate on the committee. And a couple of things. So just recently, you know, in the 2019 process, we'll recall that we were also looking at energy. There was this big, there was a big to do. So there were a bit more complex. A lot of things, for example, OSSC 7 had changed, and you know that, Mr. Vice Chair, very well. So we went to OSSC 716, big changes in Chapter 16, and you know, things like that. So maybe that's something that the board can consider when they're looking at committee membership and then the number of committee members. You know, how nimble can the committee be to get through all of the material that we get through, and then what's really kind of on the table for this iteration of the OSSC. I hope that helps. Thank you.
Eric Schmidt, does that address the concerns you might have had from previous work and what the committee might have worked with before? Okay. Any other board member comments, questions like to pull together for us as board members? Yes, go ahead. Chief Forester, board member.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, on the number of members, I guess I do lean towards, right, this is intended to be a public process. We benefit from a wide variety of experts being involved. I also look at, we have a significant number, I believe, of structure board members who are going to be termed out at the end of their terms. And so this is also, I think, a way to sort of recruit and get people interested, possibly get them some exposure to this board for hopefully continued involvement, and who knows, potentially, appointment maybe on the board or interest in it. So I think it's a really good opportunity. When I look at the structures code, as we saw in the last cycle, particularly, there's a wide variety of highly specialized construction issues that go into into a commercial structural code. And we have structural, energy, fire, accessibility, architecture, contracting, engineering, existing buildings. That is a wide variety of specialty to be handled by a small number of folks. So I would advocate for a minimum, I think, of 7. In an ideal world, I think 9 would be probably an ideal number. If we have good qualified people who are willing to put in the time and willing to put in the work, I say I would want to try and accommodate. Certainly, if we have 9 qualified, interested experts, I think this board would benefit from their participation. I would just advocate for that larger number if it's possible. Thank you.
Appreciate that, board member Forster. Is there any other comments that we'd like to expand on that, or provide other opportunities to discuss the makeup of the board, or how that methodology might be in terms of how to solicit a number of topics here that we could talk about to be able to orchestrate the motions that are up and coming? Appreciate the input. Thank you. Yes, Member Forster.
A question. I may have missed it. My apologies. But for the actual selection, so we're going to solicit interested parties. And then how does the selection process actually work?
I know in the past what we've done, we have evaluated that within the board. We could request building codes divisions to pre-select if we determine that's an important methodology. My preference is to keep it open and allow that to happen in the next meeting, the August 4th meeting, because we don't have enough information that I believe that we can be that selective right now. I'm hopeful that we'll have a number of people who would like to participate. It may be kind of an unneeded methodology that could happen. So I believe we as the board members would be able to suggest or recommend to the building codes divisions how that committee would be orchestrated. So I guess I'm going to open it up to Tyler and ask if he's had any experience, and if not, then he could defer to Tony or Elena regarding that previous work. So Tyler, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, Tyler Glaze for the division. It's my understanding that it varies based on the board and what the board chooses to do. Once the solicitations have come in and the individuals that are interested have the list is given to the board can vote on it as a group. They in the end will need to approve all of the members as a group and say, this is the code committee, we all approve these members. But it can be however the board decides to approve them, in what order, if they want to do it in real time in the board meeting, if they want to do it prior to that, but they will need to formally approve the full committee at the board meeting. If the board would like to approve those on the August 4th board meeting, they will need to do that and take a vote on that committee.
Thank you for that. Yes, Chief Forster, I I really appreciate your comment. This is a really good question and methodology to kind of look forward to how this might be addressed in the August 4th meeting. I also think it gives visibility to those who are wanting to do that be on the committee to see what that makeup would be. So yes, please go ahead and respond to what Tyler mentioned. Forrester.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess it's probably a question for BCD staff. But is it possible, it seems like one possibility that I think I've seen in the past is that members or interested parties, right, put in their interest. And then is it possible to have BCD sort of vet those, presuming, I'm presuming we're going to get more than we need, I'm hopeful. Is it possible to have BCD sort of vet those and make a recommendation to this group? It just seems like it may be difficult for a board in the public meeting to review, say if there's 20 or 30 candidates, review qualifications and expertise and that sort of thing. So I guess I'd throw that out for discussion. It seems like that may be a possible way of doing it, is have BCD do some pre-vetting, make recommendations. Obviously, they'd still need to provide us the full list so that we could review and see if there's a particular candidate or industry that we feel is not represented, or if we have a different opinion. But that may be helpful for this board if there could be some pre-work done ahead. And again, my apologies to BCD staff for advocating for you doing more work for us. But we do greatly appreciate it. We rely a lot on your expertise. So I don't throw out these things lightly. Thank you.
Yes, Board Member Forster, thanks for that. I'm starting to think about all sorts of things, all sorts of application methodologies and qualifications, and just wondering if that's something we've done in the past. So I just, again, defer to Tyler to see if that's a methodology that we've used before.
Mr. Chair, again, Tyler Glaze, policy analyst for the division. The division is happy to make recommendations if that's what the board likes to do, and at least take a look at the people who have either requested themselves to be part of the committee or have been nominated, as it were. I know that the division has worked closely with many other boards to help them come up with a list of their committees, but again, it will be the board's decision to finally approve the full committee as either recommended or as they choose.
Yes, Eric Smith.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Tyler. Thank you, Committee Member Forster, for your recommendations. I would agree if BCD staff does have the capacity, I would anticipate that you'll get, a good number of applications. And if it is possible for staff to do some pre-screening and bring recommendations for the board deliberation, a decision on August 4th, I would definitely agree with that. And as such, perhaps I'm not sure of the what we're going to be approving or amending today in terms of this. Might need to take that into consideration on some language, because it says right now, August 4th, announce the members of the code review committee. And I think it's more about deliberate and decide and make decisions about the board members. So just fine tuning there a little bit. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair Eric Schmidt. In response to that, and before I go to Gary, I would just mention that when we do ask for a pre-screening, I think it would be helpful for BCD to understand exactly what kinds of issues we would like to have opened up in that pre-screening, and is it really about the intention of the person applying for the committee, or is it their previous history, or is it their expertise? Those three things might be on the table to help BCD understand exactly what they're pre-qualifying for. So we might want to talk about that in this meeting. Again, back to Board Member Heikkinen. Board Member Heikkinen, did you get your question that you had?
Yeah, I'm not sure if I'm totally understanding the way this discussion is going. My preference would be at the August 4th meeting that we are not picking the committee members, that we are not spending board time discussing who ought to be on the review committee. My preference would be to have maybe BCD and maybe a subgroup of this board review the names and make the selections and make a recommendation to the board at their August 4th meeting, at which time the board could approve and or discuss. I don't think it would be good use of the board's time to be deliberating on who ought to be on the review committee if that was being suggested. And so I guess to try to head towards wrapping this up, we need a diverse committee. However it was done last time, I thought was actually done pretty well. And I don't know exactly how it was done last time. I did sit on the review committee for the latest go on the OSSC. We had a very diverse group of contractors, architects, engineers, structural, fire. We had a great group. I don't recall off the top of my head how many were on there. I'm thinking it might have been 9. But however that committee was selected at that point in time, it was a good committee. I think the process used was a good one. And so my suggestion would be BCD and maybe a subgroup of this board reviews the names when they come in, chooses who's to be on the committee or who they're going to recommend to the board, and to do it that way. And then, we can certainly have discussion at the board meeting on the floor. But frankly, I don't think it's good use of our time to be debating at that point in time who ought to be on the committee if that's what was being suggested.
Board Member Rankin, I appreciate your comments regarding the selection process and potentially making available a smaller group to pre-decide that to help with the VCT selection or the PCT recommendations. And I think in this particular meeting that we're having right now, the focus is to create the committee and to make sure that the time frame is such that we were able to get the committee going and allow them to deliberate on ideas and proposals so that we can get a October 1st, 2022 OSSC. And I think we're all focused on that. There's no issue, I believe, in that case. And the deliberation inside August 4th is a good one. I think I'd like to open up to the board members here to kind of expedite where we are with this in this particular meeting. What other concerns there might be besides the selection process and the groupings of people and the time frame that we're setting up. Is there any additional items that need to be brought forward to discuss? Any other questions, comments? Okay, so let's focus on those 3 items that we have: the selection process, the number of people, and the time frame. We had heard earlier about extending out this time frame to July 22nd, and we heard also from Building Codes Division that would still work for them to be able to prepare the information that's needed for that, with this additional concern related to a subgroup that might be selecting, assuming that would be able to happen between the 22nd and the 4th somehow with a smaller group. What's the feeling from this particular board, the members of this board, about the opening date for selecting of committee members between July 1st and July 22nd? Okay, that sounds great. So the time frame sounds good, the schedule sounds good. So we'll make that in our motion to make sure that July 22nd is available. The second item I'd say that is important related to how the selection would be happening is the categories of selection methodologies. And then we can move on to the actual subgroup that might be helping with that. So let's take a look at those ideas that were proposed earlier, having to do with intent and groupings of people and what other qualifications might be needed to help either this small group or the Building Codes Division make a recommendation to the the board. So are there any other items that we want in terms of the selection process besides intent and expertise? Yes, Board Member Forrester.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. A question probably for BCD staff and maybe Eric or others are experts on it as well. But in the upcoming code, model code that we're going to be evaluating, does anybody know, is there any specific area of special expertise that we definitely need represented on this committee? So like, for example, last time we had, I think energy was one of the really big ones. But in the upcoming one, is there any specific area of significant change that we need to make sure that we have good qualified expert representation for? Thank you.
So I think this is a really good question to have Board Member Forrester. I know that it does take some concerted effort to go through all those proposals and the changes that happened in 2021. When I looked at that, the information that was presented by the IBC about this, there were over 900 pages of proposals that that I'm going through and looking at. I have a project that I actually have 2 projects now that are using the 2021 code in other jurisdictions outside of Oregon. So I'm getting familiar with that. They're working on it for about 6 months now, and I haven't completely wrapped my head around those changes. But I do see some areas that are more helpful. The things that have happened that I've seen in the 2021 code, there's more tables, there's things that are consolidated, there's language that have been improved. I see a general sense in terms of the 2021 code for a better communication style. But generally, and the categories seem to be the same, the chapters seem to be organized very closely to what's happening. I see more of a nuance to the 2018 code rather than new broad ideas or large strokes. We took a big invitation to that in the 2019 OSSC by taking in the timber industry and then making that tall piece happen. So that heavy lift that happened in the 21 code has already been done within the OSSC. So that piece, I believe we've got that going already. And as BCD mentioned before, Tony mentioned before, the energy is inside of the other board, and the accessibility is also a big one that's coming in. So potentially we could get that invitation happening for accessibility. That's a strong one. We jumped over the 2010 ADA invitation for the A117.1, and that's now in the 2021 code as a part of the adopted piece. And the ASC E7 2016 edition is already in the 2018, which is now 2021, so that's not changing. I'm just kind of ferreting through your question, Board Member Forrester, trying to make that open to everybody that's here, and looking at that. The IEBC had made some changes in there as well. We're keeping inside of 34, so I guess it depends on what the committee decides, but at this point, if we keep the 2019 methodology, it's inside of 34, and the 2021 code doesn't do it that way. They have it as an independent code. I think that's important for publication purposes, but in the case of the OSSC, my hit from the work that we've been doing with it is that it's a good fit, and I would end up going that direction to keep that going. So we might want somebody who's good at renovations and does a lot of remodels, those kinds of interfaces with the commercial code, and how that might be working. I would invite some type of expertise in that Chapter 34 section, how that's working and what kind of input people might be able to have with that. That would be something I'd be interested in hearing from a committee member. Also, the relationships with the other sections that we had previously, the institutional work related to hospital was a big heavy lift that Oregon had done early, and in the 2018 code, that's all integrated. So I believe that isn't as strongly moving forward in this 2021 version. So I guess I'd open it up to other board members if they have comments about what they see in the 2021 code and what kind of expertise we might be needing. My hedge is I'm looking for someone who might be good at accessibility and someone who's good in renovation commercial work. Yes, Board Member Hecken.
Yeah, I just a clarification here. Since they pulled energy out of basically the OSSC, just make reference to basically the standalone commercial energy. What I was going to say, we probably won't need that specific expertise on the review committee, and it could make it a step easier and maybe a couple of steps shorter to this point. So I don't know that we need that specific expertise.
Yeah, I would agree with you, Board Member Hecken, and I know that my remembrance of the committee meetings, I think we had about 40 hours worth of work over 3 months period. 50% of that was about energy, and that's a kind of a gross estimation. I didn't actually keep the hours checking and all that. With going to the energy board and having that recent revision already completed, and thus referencing that within the 2019 and now going to 2022 OSSC, I believe you're right. I'm in alignment with that in terms of energy expertise. It's not as strongly needed, and it's basically completed for this next cycle. Any other comments from the board members of that expertise? Okay, so in terms of the 2 items that I had mentioned before, in terms of reviewing committee members for intention, like their desire to serve, and also their expertise, what they might offer to the committee and how that might be completed. Those 2 areas of recommendation that might happen from a subcommittee or building codes vision or a combination thereof, I believe is complete with no additional ideas. So I'd like to go to this 3rd item having to do with the selection process and how we might orchestrate that or create that within the motion. So I'm opening up this idea of potentially having this subgroup of maybe 3 people who could review from this board group, who could review the applications and work with Building Codes Division for the recommendation. Is that something that we want to pursue? And so, do you have any comments about that? I'm having trouble with my mic, sorry. Board Member Forster, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think Gary's recommendation is excellent, and I fully support doing that. Having a small group could be, you name it, 1 to 3 people even. Doesn't need to be a lot, but I think that really working with BCD's technical staff to review and make some recommendations will certainly speed up and expedite the August 4th meeting and allow things to continue on track. So I just wanted to say I fully advocate for that. And with that, sorry, but Board Member Schmidt, I would really recommend that you be part of that group as a building official responsible for everything under that code. I think your insight is particularly valuable. So I'm throwing you under the bus. Thank you.
Thanks you, Board Member Forster. Board Member Vice Chair Eric Schmidt, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Committee Member Forster. Appreciate that. I'm comfortable with the recommendation in terms of having a small subgroup of this group to kind of partner with BCD staff to develop recommendations to bring back to August 4th. So I'm comfortable. I'm also equally comfortable with BCD staff doing it as well. So I feel comfortable that they know what we're doing here, what we're trying to accomplish, and having a diverse representation of the board. So I'm equally comfortable either way. Should the board decide to go with the subgroup, I'm happy to participate. I will not be putting an application in for being on the code committee, but if I can be of assistance, I'm happy to do that. So thank you.
Thanks for the input, Vice Chair. Any other comments, questions for this subcommittee and BCD recommendations for committee members? All right, so having no comments from those that are here related to the additional comments related to that, I'm wondering if there's anybody, soliciting anybody here to work on that subcommittee. Is there differentiation that anyone would like to make to do the work for that prior to the August 4th meeting? I know there's a 1 week window there basically, and it needs a schedule commitment. So if people are available, that's probably the first question. And then arranging the schedule time probably could be done outside this, but in general sense, is there an ability to work with a schedule within that week to be available to make the cut, if you will, or the recommendations? Anyone here would like to volunteer to participate in that subcommittee?
Can I volunteer another committee member?
I think that's a good idea, Vice Chair. Go ahead. Yeah, I think that our board tends to really be a very strong servant group, and with that brings some humiliation or some humbleness, I guess I'd say. And so I when we were working with the committee members in the last cycle, I really appreciated the fire group of folks that their insight was very helpful in terms of fire safety. So I would really invite Board Member Forster to be a part of that selection group if you're open to that.
I second that.
And obviously you don't have to accept that, but I just like open that week up for you to between the 22nd and the 4th, somewhere in there, if that works for your schedule.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair, is exactly what's going through my head. But no, I'd be happy to do it. I don't know about Eric, but I mean, I'm thinking, or Vice Chair Schmidt, I'm not necessarily thinking that it requires an in-person meeting. To me, this seems like something if BCD can get the nominees, do a review, and I think it's something that can even be accomplished over email. That way we don't have to try and coordinate a meeting that week. I don't expect, again, everybody's very busy. So it seems like it's something that can easily be accomplished via email. We could review, vet, make sure there's no major hiccups. And I agree that, I rely very much on BCD's staff's expertise. So it seems like it can be fast, make sure that there's no red flags. We could have that approved, or not approved, but recommended for that August 4th meeting, I think pretty quickly. That's kind of my thoughts. So thank you.
Yeah, great. Great input on that email. I never even thought about that communication stuff. Go ahead, Board Member Rocco.
Yeah, I guess since I kind of made the suggestion, I'll throw my name in there too. So I'd be happy to work with Steve and Eric and BCD. I agree with Steve that, I guess to the extent that we can find a meeting time, great. If not, I do think that a lot of it could be done via email, discussing some, maybe to close out this portion of it, put my name in.
Great, thanks very much, Board Member Rocco. So I'm hearing a consensus here within our group that we can provide a support group of Board Member Steve Forster, Board Member Gary Heikkinen, and Vice Chair Eric Schmidt to work with BCD in the communication style that works well for you all between the July 22nd and the August 4th date to help provide a recommendation for committee members. Is there any objection to that from the board members here? Okay. I think at this point, unless I've forgotten one of the points we were working with, my hope is that we can now move into the motions, and I'm going to read the motions that Tyler had mentioned before, and looking at the action requested. So progressively through that, it's on your help sheet. The action requested moves into the motions that are written on the help sheet. So I'm going to read all 3 action requested, and I'm going to read all 3 options for motions. And then I'd like to open that up for discussion, making sure that we captured everything and haven't forgotten something. So the action requested is board determination of the appropriate model code to use as a baseline for the 2022 Oregon Structural Specialty Code. The second action requested is the board decision on whether to form a code review committee and to solicit members of the committee if one is being formed. And the third action requested is board determination on when to accept public technical code amendment proposals for proposed inclusion in the 2022 OSSC. Basically, we haven't talked about any of those 3 action items, so you might want to reaffirm or state about those. The 3 motions then that follow from that is the motion to approve the division proposed code adoption process steps, and the motion to amend or approve the division's proposal for code adoption process steps, or third, the motion to disapprove the division's proposal for code adoption steps and provide guidance on how the board wishes to proceed. So these 3 key motions are dependent on the schedule that is inside the agenda and the process in which that would be happening. So going to that schedule that has been proposed by the division through the memo from Tyler Glaze, we have a time frame that starts today, June 30th, as a committee selection member process that goes from July 1st and, as we talked about, July 22nd. So that would be in the second group called amending the motion to what the BCD has proposed. The July 1st through August 15th is the public comment period, and there was opening to accepting that to be extended, so the August 15th potentially could go out through another 2 weeks, and I can reaffirm that with the BCD group and see if the August 30, I can't do the math really quickly, but 28, 29, so it'd be the August 29th would be the date for that revision of that public comment period. And then the August 4th meeting, we would be selecting the committee members. The code review committee still looks like the September through October 2021 is when the committee would be reviewing all the information. And then November 3rd is us looking at those recommendations from the committee. And then January 22nd has the structures board meeting for low rise to approve the final recommendations for adoption so they can integrate with what we're proposing for our baseline code requirements and how that interfaces with the residential manufacturing structures board. The public rulemaking hearing from February through March 22nd. That's when the public can comment about the work that's been done for both from the board, from the committee, from the interface with the residential manufacturing structures board. And that sets the tone. March 1st then sets the tone for the publication time frame from the publisher that would allow us to have code books ready for October 1st. And then we typically have a phase-in period, which then allows that to go out another 2-3 months, December 31st. So from October 1st to December 31st is this grace period that allows people to practice in either the 2019 or the 2022 code. So after speaking all of that, what I was able to determine was that we should go back and look at the action requested and make sure we've addressed those, because we haven't talked about those. And the second thing is to provide building code direction for a motion that allows them to go forward with how the next code is going to be adopted. So at this point, I'd like to bring forward the three action items to make sure we've talked about them. And the first action item is the baseline for which code we will be using to orchestrate the 2021 Board Instructional Specialty Code. And I'm just wondering if there's any comments from board members about using the 2021 IBC. Is there any agree, disagree? Actually, so let me phrase it very directly. And is there any disagreement for using the 2021 IBC as the code baseline to amend? Any disagreement? Okay, no disagreement with using the 2021. So that gives the BCD some guidelines for how we anticipate that to be used. The time frame is, we did talk about the time frame and allowing maybe some flexibility of that. I'd like to go over the August date with Building Codes Division to see if we can make it the August 28th as opposed to the August 29th as opposed to the August 15th. So is there any support from Building Codes Division to allow that time frame for the public code amendment proposal period to change from July 1st through August 15th to a new date of July 1st through August 29th? Can the Building Codes Division respond to that time frame to see if that would work? Tyler.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've just been given a thumbs up by Administrator Alana Cox that date does work.
I appreciate that. Okay, so I'd like to talk then within the board group. Is that a date that those two date changes to the proposed dates that were given by the division? If there's any objection to modifying the proposed dates that were given, where we would change the date from the committee member selection from July 1st, July 15th to a new date of July 1st through July 28th. And then also the public comment period changing from July 1st through August 15th, changing to July 1st through August 28th. Is there any disagreement with modifying those dates? Yes, Gary, I can.
You said the solicitation for the July 28th. I think you meant July 22nd, correct?
I did mean July 22nd. Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Are we ready for a motion?
I don't know yet. I think I have one more action item to go over. I think we're close to a motion, but I think I haven't read the third action item to make sure we're clear on that.
Okay.
Thank you for that recommendation. The third item was board determine when to accept public technical code amendment proposals for possible inclusion. So that is the date we just mentioned, right? So that's, yes, you're right, we have gone over that. So that was changing that to the August 28th date. Yeah. Okay, so I do believe we are ready for a motion. Go ahead.
Well, I'm ready to make that motion. I move that we accept Building Codes Division's proposed processing timeline with amendments to the Code Selection Committee date extended to July 22nd, and the code proposal acceptance date extended out to August 29th. Would that sound like a good motion?
That sounds like a very good motion. That sounds like alignment with the discussions we've had in the board so far. I would just request if there's any discussion related to that motion, now would be the time to have that discussion. Hearing no discussion, I'd now like to ask if there's any objection to that proposed motion. Hearing no objection, the motion passes. I believe that completes the item related to the future of this. Is there any other comments? Hearing slight noise here.
Mr. Chair, we will need to take
Yes, Lisa.
a roll call vote for this.
We can do that. Okay, so let's take a
And
roll call.
do we need a second?
I'll second. Yeah. We don't need a second, but thanks very much for the second. Yeah, thank you very much. So, well, I'd like to do a roll call vote on that motion. And if you could just go through the roll call, I'd appreciate it.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Stephen Forster,
Yeah, approve.
Brenda Hartzog,
Approve.
Gary Hagenin,
Yes.
Randy Samuelson,
Yes.
Kale Zuslog,
Yes.
Vice Chair Eric Schmidt,
Yes.
Chair Eric Sandoval.
Yes,
Motion passes.
motion passes. Thank you very much for your participation, Board. I feel that we vetted the issues well, and we've talked about a lot of ideas, and I'd like to see this go forward, and looking forward to all of you on the August 4th meeting with the recommendations from the group, Building Codes Division's recommendations with assistance of Board Member Steve Forrester, Gary Heikkinen, and Vice Chair Eric Schmidt. With that, I'd like to move to our next agenda item. Having looked at all the other pieces of the help sheet, I'd just like to affirm with Melissa that I've covered all of the items except for adjournment before I do adjournment. Is that correct, Melissa? Have I gone through all the items on the help sheet?
Yes, sir.
Appreciate that. With that, then, I would like to say that we have no further business, and the meeting is adjourned at 10:43. Thank you all, board members, and those supporting this. Very, very good meeting.